Hey, let's take a trip around the curve. Barbie Mania continues, baby, as director Greta Gerwig breaks global and United States box office records for the first female director to make over $1 billion with Barbie. But not all is fun and fluffy, because Barbie did get banned in Kuwait and faces censor review in Lebanon. The SAG-AFTRA strikes move on. President Fran Drescher and Duncan Crabtree Ireland, the negotiator, were out on the picket lines and said that the interim agreements are designed to undermine the production slates of Hollywood studios and ensure they come back to the table. Speaking of strikes, Arrow star Stephen Amell goes from slamming the strike to walking the picket line. Thanks for supporting, brother. SAG-AFTRA takes up Bethany Frankel's fight to unionize reality show contestants and end exploitive practices. The New York Times moves to block AI training from published content and adds a ban to terms of service. Peacock is streaming the Focus Features Everybody documentary by Julie Cohen beginning August 18th. Bruce Lee anime series House of Lee from Shannon Lee and Shibuya is set to debut with an Enter the Dragon 50th anniversary release. Wonder Woman 3 is not in development at DC Studios, but we did hear Gal Gadot make some recent statements implying that the DC superhero sequel is on the way. Suits breaks its own Nielsen record again as the most stream acquired content with 3.7 billion minutes viewed. CAA begins layoffs across multiple departments, and it looks like Disney is getting very chummy and very comfortable as it sets up to buy the rest of Hulu. Bob Iger says Disney Plus password sharing crackdown is coming in 2024, so beware. Netflix is set to open Manhattan's Paris Theater this September. Sam Mendes and Armando Iannucci's The Franchise comedy has been ordered to series at HBO, and the Rust trial is set for December. Angelina Jolie joins the Broadway-bound The Outsiders musical as a producer. Talk to Me is in the works from A24 and Danny and Michael Philippou. And Alexei Navalny, the subject of the Oscar-winning documentary, gets 19 years tacked onto his Russian prison sentence. Now, you know I couldn't leave the conversation with Gal Gadot without talking about Heart of Stone, which is going to be on Netflix. I also checked out a new documentary on Netflix called Ladies First, a story of women in hip-hop. And your girl is dealing with some really gritty documentaries. One is called Telemarketers, coming to HBO, and the second one is called $1 Billion Heist, where a Bangladesh bank got swindled out of billions of dollars. Acclaimed director Mark Turtletaub talks with the Curvy Critic about his latest film, Jules. All that and more coming up on the Curvy Critic right now.
Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Yeah, you know, shooting straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know, I'm shooting straight from the hip.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to another brand new episode of the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. I am your host. Oops, what's that back there? Carla Renata. And we are going to celebrate 50 years of hip hop. It had its official anniversary on Friday, but I'm going to talk about ladies first. As I said in the teaser, I'm going to talk a little bit about Heart of Stone with Gal Gadot. I'm also going to talk about this Telemarketer documentary, which is crazy. And Billion Dollar Heist, which is also crazy. And I have director Mark Turtletop. You know him from The Farewell, Little Miss Sunshine, really wonderful movies he does. I'm a big fan of his. And he has a new movie out called Jules, which stars Sir Ben Kingsley, Harriet Sansom Harris, and Jane Curtin. So we're going to cover all of that today on the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. But before I get into all of that, let me see what my friend Brandon is saying. So he's saying, he said, hey, he starts his session tomorrow of his animation sessions. You know, I always like to support my boy Brandon. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you for popping in. And my homie from another mother, Albert, what's up? So there's that. All right. So let's get right into it, shall we? There is this brand new documentary on Netflix. It's called Ladies First. And it is really quite stellar. It is co-executive produced by Queen Latifah, MC Light, and the producer and director of a film that got nominated and won a Peabody Award called Mr. Soul by a friend of mine named Melissa Hazlett. So basically, Ladies First it debuted on August 9th and it delves into the remarkable contributions and personal histories of Black women who shaped the hip hop culture. It's a 4-episode series and it details how these women changed the world while combating misogyny, racism, colorism, and beyond. You know, I just have to come back on camera and say that in addition to this being the 50th celebration of hip hop, it was ironic that I was having this very same conversation, last weekend at a fish fry. And we were talking about hip hop and women's contributions to hip hop. And we were talking about the disparities between the way men do hip hop and the way women do hip hop. For example, when men do hip hop, they call us all kinds of names, bees, hoes, it's all about us performing sexual acts in a lot of their lyrics and, basically not saying really wonderful things about women. Women hip hoppers concentrated on the beats, the lyrics, the vibe, the look. And as we got further into this century and this decade, women became more confident with their bodies, became more confident with their looks, became more confident in the space, and they began to be a little bit more sexual. And so they started to get a lot of flack for being overtly sexual, but it's being overtly confident. And I didn't get that until I watched this documentary, because I would have been the first one to say, yeah, I don't need to see nobody's butt twerking in my face on a TV screen one more time. But I will say that after watching this documentary, I wholeheartedly changed my mind. So it deals a lot with that. And I just want to give some love to some of the women that are featured in the documentary and give you a little bit of history about them and some of the films that helped shape the hip hop culture. So a lot of the women featured in the film are people like Yo-Yo, people like MC Light, who's pictured there with a couple of the other women. There's MC Light then. Monie Love. This is what she looked like then. This is what she looked like now. Lil Kim. Everybody remembers Lil Kim on the music awards with one breast out. They talked to the costume designer or the stylist that came up with that look. We see that these women and the hip hop culture have contributed to films like Straight Outta Compton, where all of these young men have become huge, huge stars, and their counterparts. They're pictured in that photograph with the director, F. Gary Gray, in the middle. Dr. Dre is on the right. Ice Cube is on the left. Below him is his son, O'Shea Jackson. There's Jason, and there's Corey Hawkins, who I talked about last week with the last voyage of the Demeter. I also wanted to talk about artists like Cardi B. A lot of these female hip hop artists have taken their platform and they've used it for good. MC Light has become a really strong force in the voiceover area. She does all of the voiceovers for all of the award shows that you see and watch and love. Cardi B has her platform where she's dealing with beauty, dealing with how you can be beautiful and be sexy and be confident with it. She she does a lot of good. She even used her platform to incite people and encourage people to get on the voting tip when we needed to vote and get some things done. But she also did receive some flack when she did this video WAP with Megan Thee Stallion. And Megan Thee Stallion has gotten some flack. We've heard recently of Lizzo getting some flack. Lizzo came out the gate, being the voice of body positivity, and now she's battling her own misogynistic and bullying tactics due to some things she may or may not allegedly have said. So I have to say allegedly because we don't know if it's true. But I'm going to come back on camera and just say that I appreciated the conversation that happened between these women. And I love the fact that they brought women into the fold and into the conversation. We only think about the Cardi B's, the Megan Thee Stallions, the Queen Latifahs, the Moni Loves, the MC Lights, the Yo-Yos, but there were at least 30 to 50 women in hip hop during this whole time. Most of them are not well known. A lot of them are. But let's give these women their due. We're always giving the men their due. Let's give the women their due. So my boy Albert said these women held and continue to hold it down. Yes, indeed, they do. Abso-freaking-lutely. So now I want to switch gears and talk about this film right here, Heart of Stone. Heart of Stone is on Netflix. It stars Gal Gadot, Jamie Dornan, and it is streaming right now. It's directed by Tom Harper, and Gal Gadot plays Rachel Stone. She is an intelligence operative. Change that picture. There we go. She's an intelligence operative, the only woman who stands between her powerful global peacekeeping organization and the loss of its most valuable and dangerous asset. Can't tell you what that asset is, because I will ruin it for you. But what I can tell you is that the performances are fantabulous. We just saw a picture with Gal and Sophie Okonedo. I've done interviews with Sophie Okonedo before. She is a force to be reckoned with, not only in the UK, but in the cinematic space in general. She plays Gal Gadot's boss in this film. And what I really love about Heart of Stone is that not only do we see Gal Gadot in an action role that is not having her dressed as Wonder Woman, but we get to see her do some stunts, things that are oftentimes relegated to the guys in the film. So we've seen this in Jason Bourne. We've seen it in Mission Impossible. We've seen some things like Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. We very rarely see these kinds of things. And when we do see these types of films, they're often attached with some kind of trauma that the woman is going through. And that's why she is this action person in this film. That is not the case for Gal Gadot. She's actually a very intelligent operative, and she conducts herself accordingly in the film. So it was nice to see her in that capacity. It was also nice to see her co-star be a younger woman who holds her own as well. And listen, Jamie Dornan, I love Jamie Dornan, right? I remember him in Belfast. He got nominated for his role in Belfast, the Kenneth Branagh film a few years ago. But he is really kind of smarmy in this film. And look at that face. That face does not look like somebody that would be evil or smarmy, but he is giving you smarmy all the way down. There are great action sequences. The film moves really quickly. I think there's probably going to be a sequel happening with it, but it's a really good watch. So make sure you check that out. It is on Netflix right now. So again, Heart of Stone with Gal Gadot and Ladies First are both on Netflix. All right. I also want to, before I continue about into the next thing, I wanted to also say that Ladies First, women in hip hop, also set the way for a lot of the films during the hip hop era. Had a lot of boys, like Boys in the Hood, Straight Outta Compton, Menace to Society. A lot of them centered around guys. But these women, Queen Latifah, being in hip hop, opened the door for a woman in hip hop to win a Grammy, a woman in hip hop to star in a film. Set It Off is one of my favorite films that stars Jada Pinkett Smith, Kimberly Elise, Vivica A. Fox, and Queen Latifah. If you have not seen Set It Off, please make your way over and check that out. All right, so let's talk about this other film that I saw. It's on HBO. It's called Telemarketers. Now, it's 3 episodes. It's directed by Sam Lipman Stern and Adam Balalo, and it deals with the unexpected 20-year journey of two unlikely office buddies who stumble upon the truth behind the work that they've been doing at a seedy call center, persuading people to give money to charities and vow to expose the American telemarketing industry. I'm going to come on camera for this one because I got some things to say. So, what I want to say about this telemarketers doc is that I could relate to it all too well. At least once a week, I'm sure y'all get these too. I get these phone calls from somebody claiming to be from the Fraternal Order of Police, asking me for a donation. First of all, I don't know you. I don't know what the Fraternal Order of Police is. So because I don't know you, I don't know what that is. You're calling me and asking me for money. It's a hard pass and a hard no for me. This is the telemarketing script and practices that a company called CDP would use to call people, and they would look folk up. They also had a practice early on where they would call you and threaten you over the phone. So I had a situation one time where I was behind in my car note. As all artists, we get behind in our bills. It happens. It's not a big deal. But I had got behind in my car note, and I got a phone call from somebody claiming to be from a collection company that was going to take my car if I didn't let them in and give them so much money right then and there. They said they were standing outside, that they had the police, and that they were going to storm in here and take my car. This is what I know for sure. When your car is about to be repossessed, they don't give you a heads up. You just wake up and the car is gone. So they would use very unorthodox tactics and methods to try to get, and they mostly would prey on older people, senior citizens, because senior citizens, have a lot of money, and some of them have retired and they have empathy. So these guys would prey on people like that, or prey on people like me that they knew were having some bill issues when I was younger, and come after you. Now, I wanted to share that with you because if you're getting those kind of calls, or if you're getting a call that you don't recognize the number, just don't pick up the phone. It's just that simple, or block them. They A lot of the people that worked for CDP, they were employees that were ex-drug addicts, ex-cons, or people who couldn't get any other type of job, and they were paid on a commission basis. So the more sales you made, the more money you made, the more you got. And they would threaten people. CDP would threaten folk and tell folk, you don't make any sales, you're out of here. And they didn't care, because for every 2 or 3 of them that were sitting there that wasn't working as hard, they could find some more that were in the same situation. It's very smarmy, but it does open up the door to let you know how crazy and off the chain that industry is. Having said that, the complete antithesis of telemarketers is another documentary called Billion Dollar Heist. It is going to be available on video demand, digital only. And this is what it's about. It is a global, dynamic, and eye-opening story of the most daring cyber heist of all time with the Bangladesh Central Bank. This feature documentary traces the origins of cybercrime, from basic credit card fraud to wildly complex criminal organizations in existence today. It is it's so fascinating, and the people that are the talking heads are people like cybersecurity experts, renowned journalists, best-selling authors who have dealt with this issue before, and it shows how the key players on both sides of the law are embroiled in this game of cat and mouse with our money and security on the line. I kind of liken it to, it's like, the best way to describe this documentary is, so just to put a little bit more perspective on it. So back in the day, there was this movie called The Great Train Robbery, and people kind of looked at it, and fascinated with the fact that somebody could steal, and it was millions of dollars that was stolen, right? People look at that and they look at that, they look at, smash and grabs, they look at, people going into banks with guns and telling people to get on the floor. The best way to describe this movie is that it gives you an inside, intro 101 look at what would be considered the smash and grab of the digital world. That's the best way to describe it. It's fascinating. You will learn a lot. It will make you be on your P's and Q's with all of because everybody has their stuff online. This company that took millions and billions of dollars from the Bangladesh bank is also the same company that was involved in the cyber threat that happened with Sony Pictures when they got hacked. So it was the same exact company. If a big company like Sony Pictures can get hacked, and a bank in Bangladesh can get hacked. And think about this, for a bank in Bangladesh to lose billions and billions of dollars, it would make that economy almost disappear. Bangladesh is not a rich country, so this was insurmountable, and they did it in the course of a weekend. So they made sure that when they did it during a time where the people in Bangladesh could not call New York City because it was the weekend. So they waited until offices and businesses had closed down in New York on Friday. They started their hacking on Friday, did it Saturday, did it Sunday. They tried to get a hold of this other bank that would allow the transfer to go through, but that bank was in a country where they were celebrating Chinese New Year. They actually didn't even get to addressing this issue until the following Tuesday. Baby, look, I'm telling you, it was fascinating. Again, Billion Dollar Heist is a video on demand title only. You can only see it if you are on a video digital platform, and you purchase it and buy it there. All right. So having said that, let's get into the interview for today. I talked to this director, Mark Turteltaub. Mark, I keep wanting to say his name all kinds of wrong ways, but Mark Turteltaub is the director of Little Miss Sunshine. He did The Farewell with what's her name? I can see her face. Ugh, I can't remember her name right now. But anyway, he did The Farewell. He did Little Miss Sunshine, and now he has this new movie called Jules, and it stars Serbain Kingsley, Harriet Sansom Harris, and Jane Curtin. This is what this film is about, and I actually kind of loved it. So let me just tell you what it's about and get into it. Milton, who's played by Serbain Kingsley, is a small town senior with a fading memory who leads a quiet life in Western Pennsylvania until one night when a really loud boom wakes him up from his sleep. The next morning, he finds that there's an extraterrestrial spacecraft that has landed in his backyard, destroying his bird bath, his azaleas, and stranded this alien pilot. Milton invites the alien into his home, and the two, in their own isolated way, begin to develop a rapport. The alien never ever speaks, but soon Milton's neighbors, Sandy, played by Harriet Sansom Harris, and Joyce, played by Jane Curtin, discover the visitor whom they've nicknamed Jules. And together, this trio conspires to keep Jules's presence a secret from the town and from the government that is furiously searching for this mysterious craft. Now, what I will tell you about this film is this. We've seen this premise a few times in films like, there's an old movie from, I think it's from the 80s or 90s, called Cocoon, where a bunch of senior citizens get in this pool, and because there's alien beings in this pool, it provides them this energy of youthful vitality until it doesn't. With E.T., we've seen an extraterrestrial that becomes like a family member, and it's heartbreaking when he leaves. In Jules, and in E.T., the alien speaks, and in a lot of these other sci-fi movies, the alien speaks. The Jules, the alien in this movie, never says a word. Never says a word. And I talked to Mark about that. You will never see another film like this. It is very heartfelt, and it centers around the types of films that Mark does, which are always from an emotional point of view on relationships and how those relationships are navigated from a humanity standpoint. So having said that, I won't tell you any more about it. But before we get into playing this interview with him, I'm going to go back to my thing, Awkwafina. Thank you, child, because I could not think of Awkwafina's name in The Farewell to save my life. Oh, Lord Jesus. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Albert. Awkwafina is the child's name that was in The Farewell. Thank you. All right. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and play this interview. So take a look and a listen to my interview with director Mark Turteltaub talking about Jules. I am a huge fan of your work, so this is an immense pleasure for me to speak with you today. I've seen The Farewell, I've seen Loving, I've seen Little Miss Sunshine, and I noticed that there's a common thread with your work, that you seem to be drawn to stories about humanity and people within that humanity going through some type of transition. Am I correct in that assessment?
You are right on, spot on.
So having said that, what was it about Gavin's script, especially because he's a first-time feature director? What was it about this particular script that made you go, oh, I have got to do this?
Yeah, Carla, you hit it right when you said that those are the things I'm looking for. The way I put it, there's usually 2 or 3 things I look for in a screenplay, and this one had it. Gavin wrote a beautiful story. First, it needs to be about something important, something that's meaningful, and when you go out of the theater, you have something to talk about and say, okay, how did that apply to our lives, or what do you think happened to those characters? It initiates a dialogue. But it can't just be on the nose. It's got to have entertainment value. If it's not entertaining, then no one's going to want to see it. So it's got to be meaningful, have something to say. It's got to have entertainment value. And then the third thing, which is hard to describe, it's something that you just haven't seen before. And now that you've seen this movie, Carla, you know that we're not going to see another movie like this in the next 5 years. There's one of a kind. And so for me, it was that one of a kind quality to it. And you often get that from people who haven't had their first movie made. And Gavin wrote a beautiful script.
Speaking of Kwan, I wanted to know why the decision was made to have Kwan look the way that she did.
So the look, though, that you're asking about was I wanted to make the movie. First of all, I wanted a real person. And you're spot on when you say it's the eyes. When I first went to Sir Ben Kingsley and he said yes, all the key actors said yes within 5 days. They all loved the screenplay. And the second thing he said to me, besides yes, is, am I going to be acting against a stick with a ball on top of it, which is the way you do in CGI? And I said, no, there's going to be a real person, and her name is Jade. And he said, oh, good. And the whole idea was you wanted something to play off of. And because she gives off so much without saying anything that two of the actors said, I could get lost in her eyes. And that's a real testimony to her. And then the general look I wanted it to be like a 1950s science fiction movie. So I didn't want it to be CGI and very current. I wanted the spaceship to like an old saucer that we might have seen in like The Day the Earth Stood Still or Flash Gordon or something from another era. And then I wanted the alien to also look like a classic blue silver alien. And so that's how we came up with the look. And we had a great production designer working on the ship and the look of the movie.
There was one moment where I saw Kwan when they were standing outside. I forget what Milt was saying to her, but there was one moment where it looked like her skin turned a little red. And I thought, oh, okay. For the brilliance with that, I said, all right, then, for giving Kwan a little emotion, because I don't think of extraterrestrial beings as being emotional, but we've seen that in some instances that is the case. I did catch that. That was really little and really small, but I was like, okay, Mark Turtletop, I see you. I see you. Speaking of casting, Harriet and Jane, both of them are capable of being each other's parts. They have the acting capacity to have been Joyce and or Sandy. What made you cast them in their respective roles?
That's interesting. Nobody's asked me that. And that's an interesting question, Carla. I think that it really revolved around Jane of the two. And that is Harriet, yes, can do comedy. But she has, when I saw her work, I said, oh, she's a Sandy. It's a feel thing, right? How do you describe a feel thing? And that naturally allowed Jane, who plays Joyce, to be sort of the edgy one, and so you need a balance in the movie, as you know. You need to have Sir Ben and Harriet playing even, grounded, kind of, if you were thinking about a painting, maybe they'd be both blue or both brown. And then you got Joyce, who's red, a sharp, a real streak of red in the painting. And that mixes it up nicely. And I just felt that Jane could bring that. And then what's interesting is she starts off being really edgy. And by the middle of the movie, she softens when she starts to tell her story. You know, she had a lot of lovers back in the day and she could sing back in the day. And she really starts to open up. So it's a nice, you started the conversation by talking about transformation. She goes through it along with everybody else.
I want to ask one last question about not leaning into that stereotypical trope of sci-fi in the process of doing this film, because I believe that a lot of people probably would have gone there, but because you come from the place that you come from in your storytelling from a director point of view, I knew that you wouldn't go there. So I'm just interested to know that ever creep into your mind that maybe I should do the story this way, but did the script dictate it more than your directing? I'm just curious.
No, it's a good question, really, Carla. I saw the heart of the movie being the relationship between these three people. That's the core of the movie, and how this creature, this alien, if you will, who doesn't have a voice, allows them to find their voice, and then they can connect to each other. And that's the heart of the movie. The science fiction is fun, but it's not the heart. And actually, in the script, there was more science fiction in it. And then when I got into the editing room, I looked at the movie we had, and it took me over 10 months to cut this movie, which is a long time. And it's because I wanted to get the exact right tone, or the best I could do for the movie, because you're putting all these different elements that don't usually go together: science fiction, dementia, comedy, emotion, a 4'11" alien, wild inventiveness. All of this stuff in one movie doesn't, usually if you have a story about dementia, it's very sad. And this story, I hope, is hopeful at the end. I know it's hopeful at the end. And so it's a hard thing to put them all into one package, but I knew I had to shrink the science fiction piece of it so that the rest could work.
Well, it did work. It definitely worked for me. It struck me to my core because I am that daughter. I am Milt's daughter in my life. So I could totally relate. Mark, this has been such a cool bucket list thing for me. I'm so grateful and so honored to have been able to have this conversation with you centered around Jules. And thank you so much for your artistry and your work throughout the years, and especially with this project. I appreciate you.
Well, Carla, the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much. And, one thing I'll ask you as you talk to your viewers and as your friends, these independent movies, we don't have big budgets. So put the word out. If you love the movie, tell your friends. If they love the movie, spread the word.
Absolutely. I will do that.
Thank you, Carla. And thanks for the lovely interview.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon.
All right. I loved talking to him. Yeah, I had forgot that one movie, Loving. I loved Loving. Oh, so good. Anywho, so again, you guys, make sure you take a look at Jules. It is a Sony Classics picture film, and I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. Also, check out, again, Ladies First, which is streaming on Netflix. Check out Heart of Stone, which is also streaming on Netflix. Check out Telemarketers, which was going to be on HBO. It actually started streaming today, so you'll get a jump on that. And Video on Demand, $1 billion Heist, about how billions of dollars were taken and siphoned and moved through casinos from a Bangladesh bank. And of course, Jules. All right. I also wanted to put you guys on the radar, put this on your radar. There is a film called Old Boy, which it's been remastered, and it stars Park Chan-soo, and it has been remastered and re-released. It's an older film, but it has not lost anything in the years that it has not been out. It's going to be in limited release. So if you have an opportunity to check that out, I'll talk more about that next week. I'm also going to talk more next week about Miguel Wants to Fight, which is going to be on Hulu. And of course, I'm going to go and talk about, let me pull myself back up on so you can see me. I'm also going to come back next week. I'm going to talk about Back on the Strip with Tiffany Haddish. I'm going to talk about Blue Beetle. I'm going to talk about Strays and The Monkey King. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. If this is your first time joining me, please give me a big thumbs up if you are on YouTube. If you are on any other platform, click like, click love, give me some applause, whatever you want to do, and support a sister, right? Give me a big thumbs up, though, if you're on YouTube, to let me know you're here, because if you don't do that, I don't know you was here. And I will be back next week. In the following weeks, I usually try to tell y'all what I have coming up in the following week. So next week, I'm going to talk about the titles I just mentioned. And then on August 27th, I'm going to talk about Gran Turismo, Golda, and The Dive, which was a fabulous film. And then going into the Labor Day weekend, there will not be a show that weekend because the sister needs a break. I need to go to get a little sun and fun too before the summer is up. And Labor Day is officially the end of the summer. So I need to get on it. I want to thank Brandon and my brother Albert for popping in and saying hello and hollering at a sister and supporting a sister. I want to thank everybody who tunes in after the fact and watches it after the fact. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that I have enlightened you and educated you to some things that are coming up. And yeah, so that is it. I'm going to go and I will see you next time. Love, peace, and hair grease and deuces, baby. I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.